Well, it is time for Thursday's MP panel to give us their take on the issues of the day, including this one. And here they are, four parties represented by advanced intelligence and gender parity. Here we go. Conservative MP Stella Ambler, NDP MP Matthew Callaway, Liberal MP Adam Vaughan, and the leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'll let you have first go on this, Stella. I mean, it seems to me budgets are picked very carefully, and money's allocated after a need has been established. So you get this need, you get this money allocated, and then suddenly, whoops, you've got extra money and it just goes back into deficit elimination. How can you justify taking money out of veterans services at a time when you've got so many veterans saying there's not enough?
First of all, let me clarify, the money was not taken out. That is absolutely false.
What do you call it then?
No, it's what's done is that forecasts are made according to previous years, depending on they look at the numbers of veterans that the department thinks is going to need the services, and then they forecast what the need is going to be. Then the bucket of money may or may not be used up that year. It goes back not to deficit elimination. That is patently false. It goes right back into Veterans Affairs for use the following year. I also want to make it clear that not one veteran is turned away from receiving a service because of this. It's just good budgeting practice. It's very common. It happens in other departments. Just to give you a comparison, it might be the same as, for example, EI, where there have to be projections and forecasts, and sometimes the full cap is used, and sometimes it falls short that year. But I mean, to be very clear, we've spent $30 billion since we spent $30 billion a year,
right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
since 2006, right? Which is more than the Liberals spent by $5 billion. This point was made in question period today. Yeah, and that's
more
great.
veterans, by the way.
And you know, the average benefit, or the average veteran receiving a benefit today receives $70,000, and so that's, you know, at least it's not, no one's nickel and diming our veterans. That is not happening.
All right, well, Matthew, you come on this one.
Well, this practice of lapsing funds is happening right across all departments.
$18 billion in total,
yeah,
I think.
but it is particularly problematic with Veterans Affairs, and we in the NDP are very concerned about this. You know, we put a motion forward in 2012 to shield Veterans Affairs from this kind of conduct. The Conservatives defeated that. But to Stella's point, it doesn't go back into Veterans Affairs. There's been an accumulation of lapsed money. It was another $130 million this year, and so on and so forth. And we are, Don, but we ought not to be the country where we have had more veterans and soldiers lose their lives at their own hands from Afghanistan than actually died on the battlefield. And it's shameful to see the accumulation of these lapsed funds when there is such a critical need of our veterans for services and care.
Do you think the government's funding is contributing to the suicide surge?
Well, what is clear is there's a need for services for veterans and their families for their health, and it's not there for them, and it ought to be there for them.
Elizabeth May, your thoughts on all this?
Well, I couldn't agree with what Matthew said, and also in that clip from Peter Stauffer, and I have the same kind of experience, I think we probably all do, of trying to help veterans who are trying to access disability payments, trying to get themselves into a situation where they're, depending on recent veterans coming back from Afghanistan, a lot of them are dealing with PTSD, trying to deal with getting themselves back on track to a life out of the military. And with the closure of Veterans Affairs offices across Canada, with the lack of services, I was talking the other day to a wonderful veteran who was the first veteran to have a service dog to help with PTSD. There's not funding for that. There's a huge backlog of our young men and women who served overseas who need that help. The track record on the service dogs in helping PTSD is great. Why should any veteran be waiting?
Yeah, Adam Vaughan?
It's, you know, even Don Cherry agrees. You know, I haven't found myself on the same side of an issue with Don Cherry very often, but it's clear. We have asked these men and women to make extraordinary sacrifices, and we are not there for them. I sat on the Police Service Board, and I've dealt with Julian Fantino's pension, and it is a lot better and he is treated a lot more respectfully as a police officer in Toronto than these veterans are, having served our country. There is a surplus in this budget. There are people going to court fighting to get at that, and this government spends money fighting them in court, and there's still a surplus. There are people looking for basic human services, and this government has walked away from them. You know, it's all well and fine to trot them out at a hockey game and clap and wrap yourselves in the maple leaf when you want to make a point about the military, but when it comes time to being decent to Canadians who are in need, this government has money on the table that they can spend, and instead of giving it to people that need it, who have established their needs, they take them to court.
Yeah.
And they belittle them. And then they complain that we vote against their measures in Parliament. We vote against them because, quite frankly, they're mediocre, and they don't meet the needs of our soldiers, and it's wrong.
I mean, they make pretty good points. Where are they missing the reality here?
I think they're missing the reality in that this is something that we take very seriously.
Maybe $30 billion isn't enough, Stella. Maybe $30 billion isn't enough to deal with changes in the way veterans are. They're not just World War II
there's no
and
doubt
Korea. Those are young Afghan
the need
veterans.
is there, and that the veterans are getting they're getting older, but they're also getting younger. Right? We're dealing with those that have come back from Afghanistan. No, I would disagree that this is not what's happening. It's not that there's a surplus that someone is being denied. The services are not being denied.
If the system is working, if the system is working, you would not have had to make special provision for Corporal Cirillo.
Yeah.
The compensation would have been fair and just as a right. Instead, you have made special provision for an individual, and all others in exactly the same case are left behind.
And that's not a funding decision. That's an actual. That would need to be a policy change.
Well,
you know,
but if you have the money, make the policy change. The need is clear.
The reason I think that the money's lapsing is the wait list. The veterans it's so hard for a veteran to get to someone at a desk at Veterans Affairs who's going to say, yes, we'll write a check for you. So money's lapsing because the frontline workers who used to be in Veterans Affairs offices meeting with veterans and providing for their services. So it's a policy problem, it's a staffing problem, and overall it's an indifference problem.
It's 1,100 employees in Veterans Affairs that have lost their jobs that should be there to serve our veterans.
I want to move on because there's another topic that's got some heat in the House today. Joe Oliver admitted yesterday, when he was under questioning at a committee meeting, that his small business tax breaks that he announced this fall were never really assessed by the government. There was no analysis done on the job creation potential. And in fact, it was done by the Canadian Federation of Small Business, which is a lobby group for small business. I guess I'll let you start again, Stella, because
Sure.
I don't understand why a government is going to give away $500 million in tax advantages to a specific demographic, small businessmen. Doesn't at least try and do some assessment of how much job creation is going to be, because it ended up, the Auditor General said there's going to be 800 jobs created out of $500 million.
I think what we need to know, what Canadians need to know here, is that small businesses asked for this. They told us.
People ask for a lot of money. They don't get it all the time.
Well, but
right.
small businesses they're the job creators, and we've created. You know, they're the ones creating the jobs. They're on the front lines, and they've told us time and time again that payroll taxes are the #1 jobs killer. So we've decided to do something about it. We did. The move was praised all around. And,
by small businessmen.
Sure. Well,
they
of
got
course.
the tax break.
Not so much.
Sure, because they're telling us that this will help them make investments.
Yeah.
This will help them create not only create jobs, but also capital, access to capital, that kind of thing. They'll have freeing up more money, and that can only benefit business. And
I guess. Okay.
You know, I mean, it is a good thing. This is what they asked for. We delivered it, and I just don't see how that's not a good thing.
I guess it's like asking a kid if they were good enough to get a Christmas present, and they'll say yes every time. Adam Vine, what did you make of that when you heard it?
Canadian families,
Scott Bryson did the asking on that one.
You know, most families, you know, when you spend $500, you do a little research to make sure you're getting value for your money, let alone, you know, the amount of money that's on the table with this, which is hundreds of millions billions of dollars. I mean, you do the analysis. I mean, you do the homework. You know, it's to take a lobby group on face value that the money is going to be well used. I mean, you know, as I said, veterans have asked for the money. They got a deaf ear from the government. You know, the Conservative government has become the party of fewer and fewer and fewer people, and it's a closed loop. If you're on the inside and you ask, you get. If you're on the outside, you get politicized and you get pushed away. And I come from city council. I come from city council. You don't spend $500 without getting comparative bids.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this notion that you just knock on the door and you get money in an envelope is just ridiculous.
Elizabeth May?
This is not new. Finance Canada for some time has been disconnected from evidence-based decision-making. We've seen a number of decisions where the work that one would expect to find to justify tax changes, policies such as setting Canada's large corporate tax rate, right? The multinational corporate tax rate is half that of that in the United States. That was lauded as this is for the job creators. They didn't create jobs. We've got $600 billion of cash sloshing around, 32% of GDP. Mark Carney called it dead money. There was no analysis in Finance Canada whether that would create jobs. This may well be good policy, but there's no evidence to support it, and that should bother Canadians.
Do you think it's good policy, or are you questioning the process as opposed to the end result, Matthew?
Well, I don't think it's good policy, and it's not good process. It's 800 jobs, $500,000 apiece, and you can't convince me that small business across the country support those kinds of government expenditures. You can't convince me that small business across the country thinks that that's the way the government should operate in principle, listening to a lobby group and not asking its own employees to do due diligence on such a request. And Canadians will not think and do not think that this is the way a democratic government is supposed to operate either. I mean, who is actually running this government when all you need is CFIB or any other lobby group that calls themselves job creators come and say this is what we want, and then that's what they get.
The Auditor General was pretty critical of this as a job creator. I mean, I understand small business wants it, and maybe small business deserved it, but as a job generator, it was kind of flimsy.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about 90% of businesses that will benefit.
They won't
and
create
frankly,
jobs,
if you don't think, if you don't think businesses create jobs, who does create the jobs?
No, but certainly the Auditor General. I'm just going with the Auditor General says.
Well, they do.
What has that got to do with the math?
I mean, the thing is, we're doing the right thing by cutting taxes for small business because they need to free up the capital. They need to do this. The Liberals, on the other hand, advocate for a 45-day work year, which would raise premiums by about 35%.
This is the triumph of ideology over ideas.
But it's not even ideology. Under Stephen Harper, 24%
It's supporting small business.
$650 billion debt load has been taken on since Stephen Harper became Prime Minister. So this appeal to we're conservatives, we're cutting taxes. Well, I think a lot of conservatives are worried about the fact that Stephen Harper has laid on 24% of the national debt, and that's a real issue. And this is just cosmetics.
Last word to you, Adam Baum.
Well, the issue is how you create jobs, and everyone who has done analysis of this policy says it's not going to create jobs, and if it does create jobs, it's going to be extraordinarily expensive, and the payoff isn't there. This is the triumph of ideology over ideas. When you put ideas forward, they stand the test of time, and they also stand up to analysis. When you act on ideology, you listen to the fellow travelers, you dismiss expert opinion, you don't get third-party advice, and you send a finance minister to a budget committee who says, I didn't check, I just thought it would work.
It's not ideology to create 1.2 million jobs, says the research.
No, that's a fairy
It's not
tale.
ideology.
Just say it without
That's
any facts to
1.2
support
million
it.
jobs.
It's
Most of
ideology to say it without the facts to support it.
So,
All right, well, that was a good discussion. Thank you all. It's always picking on you, those Stella, aren't they? 3 against 1. All right, appreciate that. You're in government. They're in opposition.
Okay.
It's always a good day. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you next week.